Mesdames, Messieurs, bonjour, herzlich willkommen, bienvenue à cette séance quasiment de spiritisme collectif. Je m'appelle Pamela Pianessa, je vais modérer ces discussions. Et avant de commencer, je vais laisser la parole à mon grand patron, Thierry. Thierry
Grand,
Jobin.
grand en taille seulement. Bonjour, bienvenue à ce think tank. J'ai jamais trop compris ce que voulait dire think tank, mais par contre les fantômes, je commence à un peu comprendre ce que c'est. En guise d'introduction, avant de parler de cette section dont j'ai rêvé depuis à peu près le Festival de Cannes l'année dernière et qui se concrétise ainsi, je voulais juste vous raconter à quel point cette section a réveillé des fantômes. D'abord une histoire. Pour ceux qui sont de Fribourg, il y avait un cinéma qui s'appelait le Corso, où les projectionnistes qui travaillent maintenant au Rex et qui travaillaient au Corso autrefois m'ont raconté pendant cette semaine que quand ils allaient dans la cabine de projection, ils sentaient toujours un vent froid leur passer derrière la nuque et que, mais vraiment, ils passaient toujours assez rapidement pour monter comme pour descendre. Puis l'autre histoire, elle se passe ici, en fait, pas dans cette salle, mais à l'Arena 1. Euh, Quand ce multiplex a été ouvert, qui s'appelait encore Cap Ciné, toutes les salles ont tout de suite super bien fonctionné, sauf une, l'Arena 1. L'Arena 1, donc c'est pas des blagues, l'Arena 1 avait des problèmes électriques. L'Arena 1 avait la lumière qui s'éteignait, a eu des ampoules de projecteurs qui ont explosé, alors que les autres salles, elles étaient parfaites. Les patrons du cinéma ont fait venir des techniciens, des spécialistes, ils ont défait toute l'installation électrique pour la remettre, mais non, ça ne changeait rien, ça continuait. Alors ils ont appelé un exorciste, c'est vrai. Et la salle Arena 1 a été exorcisée, et depuis ce jour-là, à part parfois pendant les ouvertures du FIF, il n'y a plus de problème. Ça vous montre qu'il y a effectivement, avant de laisser la parole pour plus d'approfondissement à nos intervenants qui ont accepté de venir aujourd'hui et que je remercie, qu'il y a un vrai lien entre le cinéma et les fantômes. Je pense que les fantômes aiment aller au cinéma. Merci et bon après-midi.
Bonjour et bienvenue à tous et toutes. Je serai très brève, je voulais juste vous dire quelques mots sur le forum qui est quand même le rendez-vous pour et fait par les professionnels du FIF. Il existe depuis 2008. Et puis après avoir été sous forme de rencontres individuelles, plutôt sous forme de pitching, il s'intéresse à à des thématiques spécifiques dès 2010, comme par exemple les séries TV au Moyen-Orient ou encore la nouvelle vague malaisienne. Et puis ensuite, on s'est intéressé aussi au scénario, mais aussi aux fonctions et possibilités de l'humour au cinéma. Et puis finalement, l'année passée, en 2016, c'était la place des femmes qui était au centre des débats. Cette année, on se réjouit donc d'approfondir la thématique des fantômes. Je me réjouis beaucoup et je remercie déjà en avance tous les intervenants et les intervenantes. Je voulais juste encore dire un merci à la SSR-SRG qui soutient tous les événements du forum et vous inviter tous et toutes à un apéritif qui aura lieu à 17h30 à l'entrée-étage à l'issue de The Think Tank. Et puis encore une petite information pratique pour les traductions. Le canal 1, c'est pour l'anglais ou le français et le canal 2, c'est pour l'allemand. Voilà.
Merci Thierry, merci Cécilia pour ces quelques mots. Alors je vais vous expliquer rapidement comment ça va se passer. Vous avez sans doute lu le programme, mais on va commencer par une introduction. Voilà, un peu pour faire le point sur les fantômes dans l'histoire du cinéma, avec Mireille Berton, qui nous vient de l'Université de Lausanne. Et ensuite, on aura deux panels, c'est-à-dire deux discussions en fait. La première avec Mathido, réalisatrice, et Annick Manert, sa productrice. Et dans un second temps, une autre discussion avec Biti Masaya et Kamal Moussal, donc tous les deux réalisateurs. Voilà. Et vous aurez évidemment la possibilité d'intervenir. Donc je passerai à l'anglais à ce moment-là parce que c'est plus simple comme langue commune avec nos invités, mais bien sûr, vous aurez les traductions. Alors, sans plus attendre, Mireille, voulez-vous nous rejoindre ? Alors, avant toute chose, juste, j'ai une question pour vous que je vais poser à tous nos invités. Quelle est votre relation aux fantômes ?
Oh, c'est une relation riche et complexe qui remonte, je pense, à l'enfance où, avec mes sœurs et mes amis, hein, on habitait dans le même immeuble. On s'était imaginé pendant des années que la cave de notre immeuble était hantée par une femme aux nénettes bleues. Évidemment, c'était le pur fruit de notre imagination, mais cette femme aux nénettes bleues m'a accompagnée, je pense, jusqu'à mes études de cinéma où j'ai découvert là des vrais fantômes. Parce que pour moi, effectivement, non seulement les fantômes vont au cinéma, mais les fantômes hantent aussi hein, le cinéma. Et donc, c'est à la fois un souvenir d'enfance, mais aussi un plaisir esthétique. Hein. Je trouve que notamment les fantômes victoriens sont absolument fascinants. Et le cinéma en est la preuve.
D'accord, et vous voilà ici avec nous. Je vous laisse commencer. Merci.
Merci beaucoup à tous et à toutes, à Cécilia Beauvais, à Thierry Jobin pour cette invitation. Et j'ai effectivement beaucoup de plaisir à vous parler aujourd'hui des fantômes au cinéma. Alors, cette expression du cinéma comme machine à fantômes a notamment été utilisée par le philosophe Gilles Deleuze dans l'image-mouvement qu'il emprunte à Kafka, lequel, dans une lettre adressée à Milena en avril 1922, décrit et définit le cinéma en tant que technologie spectrale. D'autres philosophes, après lui, d'autres intellectuels également, ont relevé les affinités électives existant entre le cinéma et les fantômes, à l'instar de Jacques Derrida, qui, dans le film Ghost Dance de Ken McMullen, répond à Pascal Augier, qui lui demande s'il croit aux fantômes, la chose suivante. Je crois que l'avenir est aux fantômes et que la technologie moderne de l'image, de la cinématographie, de la télécommunication découple le pouvoir des fantômes et le retour des fantômes. Le dispositif cinématographique permettrait dans cette perspective de réanimer le temps de la projection, le corps et l'esprit des personnes disparues qui viennent ainsi hanter le monde des vivants. Existant depuis l'Antiquité, les fantômes semblent en effet se multiplier avec l'avènement de la modernité, au sein de laquelle coexistent l'attrait pour le merveilleux et la rationalité scientifique, comme le montre par exemple ce dispositif, ce Ouija électrique de René Varcollier, un parapsychologue français qui a été notamment directeur de l'Institut métapsychique international à Paris. Le fantôme occupe une place particulière au cinéma, car s'il s'agit d'un motif présent depuis le début de son histoire, c'est aussi un motif extrêmement difficile à cerner, car il peut prendre différentes formes et assumer aussi différentes fonctions. Récurrent dans les genres de l'horreur, du surnaturel, du fantastique ou du gothique, le fantôme suscite souvent des émotions contradictoires, des émotions qui sont partagées entre fascination et répulsion. Peut-être parce que le fantôme nous dit quelque chose de nous-mêmes et de notre rapport ambivalent à la finitude et au monde de l'au-delà. On constate dans tous les cas que les fantômes sont très nombreux dans l'histoire du cinéma. Cette importance numérique s'expliquant peut-être par le fait qu'ils combinent une dimension universelle. Les fantômes sont en effet présents dans toutes les cultures, hein, comme le montre le programme du FIF, et une dimension contextuelle particulière, puisque le fantôme peut revêtir différents rôles en fonction des lieux, des cultures et des époques. Si le fantôme fonctionne comme une sorte d'archétype à valeur universelle, il peut aussi accueillir une multitude de significations possibles. Le récit de fantômes offrant au cinéma une matière première qui s'adapte très facilement à différents contextes de production. Le fantôme permet en particulier de développer une réflexion sur la vie après la mort, l'identité et les rapports humains, mais aussi sur les frontières entre le visible et l'invisible, ou encore la raison et la croyance. Il est également très propice à explorer les possibilités offertes par le langage cinématographique et permet de jouer avec les différents niveaux de narration, brouillant ainsi les frontières entre réalité et imaginaire, comme c'est d'ailleurs souvent le cas dans les films contemporains hein, qui s'amusent, qui se plaisent à complexifier hein, le dispositif narratif. Je vous propose donc, sur cette base, de parcourir ensemble l'histoire des fantômes au cinéma. Cette histoire commençant même avant l'invention du cinéma, hein, puisque dans l'histoire de la projection lumineuse, on trouve déjà des fantômes, comme dans les spectacles de fantasmagorie, qui connaissent un grand succès juste après la Révolution française et après la Terreur, qui ont tous deux laissé hein, bien des spectres derrière elles. Désignés étymologiquement comme l'occasion de dialoguer avec des fantômes, ces spectacles sont fondés sur le principe d'une rétroprojection d'images animées produites grâce à l'usage de lanternes magiques montées sur roues ou sur rails hein, et qui permettent de produire des effets de rapetissement, d'agrandissement des images. Ces images représentant le plus souvent des figures macabres, ces images étant aussi d'ailleurs projetées soit sur une toile blanche ou sur des rideaux de fumée, ce qui renforce aussi la dimension, le caractère évanescent de ces spectres. La mise en scène inventée pour ce genre de projection accentue chez les spectateurs l'impression de malaise et d'angoisse. La salle est décorée de tombeaux et de lampes sépulcrales. Des sons lugubres ou un discours inspiré de la poésie funéraire constituent l'ambiance sonore. Des personnes déguisées en squelettes ou en spectres se faufilent dans le public pour frôler les spectateurs. Des effets pyrotechniques miment l'éclair ou la foudre. Et même certains fantasmagores vont jusqu'à électrocuter ou droguer leur public. Cette tradition spectaculaire se prolonge au cinéma, qui est d'emblée perçu non seulement comme une technique de documentation du visible et du réel, mais également comme un outil permettant de capter l'intangible, l'évanescent, l'inconscient, tout ce qui se dérobe à la perception humaine. En effet, avant même d'envisager hein, la question du cinéma comme moyen de représentation du fantôme, celui-ci a été, dès les débuts de son histoire, perçu comme un médium de la spectralité, le film et le fantôme ayant en commun la particularité d'osciller entre présence et absence, apparition et disparition, matérialité et immatérialité. L'histoire des fantômes confirme cette affinité élective entre spectralité et image animée, notamment dans des œuvres qui thématisent le cinéma comme machine à fantômes. C'est le cas du film The Asphyx de Peter Newbrook, qui raconte l'histoire d'un savant passionné de parapsychologie, Sir Hugo Cunningham, découvrant à la fin du XIXe siècle le secret de l'immortalité de l'âme via une machine électrique susceptible d'emprisonner l'âme de la mort. Ce dispositif étant dérivé d'un appareil cinématographique qu'il vient précisément d'inventer. Voyons un extrait où le dispositif cinématographique permet de révéler l'existence de l'asphyx, une étrange figure fantomatique, grimaçante et agonisante, qui représente l'esprit de la mort tel que décrit dans la mythologie grecque.
You do nothing by halves, do you?
No sign of the asphyx.
So what do you conclude?
It manifests itself but for an instant, and then is gone. Now, let's compare it with the moving pictures.
Good grief.
tell you, it saw me. The hanged man's aspect saw me and stopped. You saw for yourself. It seemed to be struggling.
It couldn't possibly have seen you unless it's possessed of some unearthly intelligence.
Then what explanation?
Lors de la projection d'images, comme on le voit dans cet extrait, donc d'images qui documentent la mort d'un condamné, Sir Cunningham s'aperçoit de la présence de l'asphyxe sur l'écran qui se dessine dans un médaillon situé aux côtés du corps du mourant. Or, contrairement à l'image photographique qui ne semble conserver aucune trace de l'asphyxe, l'image en mouvement, elle, permet d'enregistrer et de visualiser l'esprit de la mort tant au moment du tournage qu'au moment de la projection de la scène filmée. L'enregistrement et le visionnement d'images de mourants sont donc révélateurs du pouvoir singulier du dispositif cinématographique à intercepter l'invisible. À partir de cet exemple, on constate plus largement que les techniques de communication modernes et postmodernes n'ont en fait pas fait disparaître les fantômes, au contraire, elles les ont amplifiés, démultipliant les occasions pour les spectres de venir hanter nos vies à travers des machines, comme le suggérait d'ailleurs Derrida. Et c'est la même chose évidemment pour la télévision et également les nouvelles technologies. Il semblerait donc en effet que plus on médiatise les relations humaines, plus nos doubles fantomatiques se propagent, comme on le voit avec les réseaux sociaux qui font proliférer les simulacres de soi. Les corps qui apparaissent à l'écran lors des toutes premières projections sont alors appréhendés par les observateurs du cinéma à l'aune du paradigme de la spectralité, l'image filmique projetée provoquant un trouble perceptif à cause de sa corporéité évanescente. Ce n'est donc pas un hasard si les premiers témoins soulignent la proximité entre le cinématographe et le surnaturel. Les féeries de Georges Méliès ou de Segundo de Chomón ne cessant de jouer sur le potentiel fantomatique du médium. Voyons un extrait du Château hanté de Georges Méliès. C'est principalement sur un mode ludique que le surnaturel hante les premiers films du cinéma, qui exploitent le motif du fantôme et autres créatures de l'au-delà pour faire la démonstration des possibilités techniques et créatives du langage cinématographique, comme le permet par exemple l'arrêt par substitution qu'on a vu à l'œuvre dans ce film. En ce sens, la figure du fantôme ne subit pas un traitement particulier puisqu'elle est utilisée au même titre que d'autres créatures surnaturelles telles que les squelettes ou les démons. Or, si ces films suscitent à l'époque l'émerveillement et la fascination des spectateurs, le fantôme tel que traité par Méliès perd très vite son impact de nouveauté auprès d'un public qui finit par se lasser de voir des squelettes sautillants. D'où une sorte de raréfaction aussi du fantôme au cinéma dans les années qui suivent. Effectivement, on constate dans les années 10 et dans les années 20 qu'il existe assez peu de films mettant en scène des fantômes, en tout cas aux États-Unis, qui à l'époque dominent la production cinématographique mondiale. Alors cette raréfaction du fantôme au cinéma peut s'expliquer notamment par le déclin des récits littéraires de fantômes, entraîné notamment par la Première Guerre mondiale, mais cette explication semble un peu paradoxale, puisque les guerres ont plutôt tendance à renforcer, à raviver le désir de communiquer avec les morts. Ils sont par contre, ces fantômes, beaucoup plus nombreux en Europe, comme en Allemagne, qui, hantés par la Première Guerre mondiale, intègrent volontiers des thèmes surnaturels, comme dans le cinéma expressionniste. Ces films des années 20 ont la plupart recours au procédé de la surimpression, qui devient la marque distinctive de l'apparition d'un esprit ou d'une créature de l'au-delà, comme dans le film d'Abel Gance, J'accuse. Les fantômes reviennent toutefois en force, occuper les écrans des années. Merci. Voilà. Alors je continue. Je disais donc que dans les années 30-40, les fantômes reviennent hanter les écrans, notamment au sein d'un genre qui a été baptisé par un critique italien de film blanc, en opposition au film noir, contemporain, donc de la même époque. Ces films sentimentaux se nourrissent de récits de fantômes propres au mouvement romantique, gothique et fantastique, où la mort vient apporter une solution aux histoires d'amour impossibles, ou alors le fantôme vient signifier que la mort est un sacrifice nécessaire et utile. J'aimerais vous montrer un extrait de Topper Returns, puisque cette série des Topper a eu beaucoup de succès dans les années 30-40. Et ça nous permet de voir comment le fantôme est représenté à cette époque.
Kara, I've told you repeatedly and incessantly, when I could get a word in edgewise, that the whole thing was no fault of mine.
I think it's ridiculous for a man of your age to pursue.
Alors, vous voyez qu'elle va, à certains moments du film, s'incarner et perdre sa qualité éthérée ou évanescente. Alors cet extrait contient nombre de lieux communs esthétiques propres au récit des fantômes, de cette époque. Le fantôme apparaît en surimpression et en légère transparence avec une musique onirisante qui appuie le caractère surnaturel de cette occurrence. La femme transformée en fantôme, donc qui vient d'être assassinée, conserve tous ses atours et ses attraits, permettant ainsi d'idéaliser le monde de la mort et de faire croire qu'il ne diffère pas tellement du monde des vivants. Et puis, le déplacement du fantôme est signifié par des mouvements de caméra et aussi également par un travail sur la bande-son qui connote l'idée d'évanescence et d'envolée, tout en reproduisant des effets comiques entraînés par l'interaction du fantôme avec son espace, avec l'espace environnant, ce qui est aussi très présent, par exemple dans un film comme L'Homme invisible. Particulièrement populaires durant la Seconde Guerre mondiale, ces films blancs garantiraient aux vivants la certitude d'une vie meilleure dans l'au-delà, alors que les spectateurs vivent dans un contexte peu rassurant. Dans tous les cas, dans ces films, le fantôme est traité sur un mode léger, voire comique, ce qui contribue à désacraliser l'idée de la mort. Or, dans d'autres films, le fantôme permet de développer une réflexion beaucoup plus approfondie sur la vie après la mort, ainsi que sur la nature humaine et ses contradictions, ses peurs et ses luttes intérieures. C'est ce qu'illustre les trois grands films appelés par la critique et l'historiographie du cinéma The Big Three, qui ont été perçus comme des films de fantômes psychologiques, le fantôme étant dans ces films le miroir des préoccupations, des peurs, des désirs, des fantasmes des vivants. Il s'agit donc de The Uninvited, The Innocents et The Hunting, deux de ces films étant projetés ici durant le festival. Ces films interrogent notamment le statut du fantôme, en ce qu'il peut être à la fois objectif et subjectif, réel ou imaginaire, collectif ou individuel. Dans The Innocents, la question se pose de savoir si les fantômes perçus par l'héroïne sont réels ou s'ils sont le fruit de son imagination, plusieurs indices permettant de pencher plutôt vers cette seconde interprétation. Voyons un extrait qui semble suggérer que les fantômes sont l'émanation de son esprit paranoïaque.
What shall I say when his feet enter softly, leaving the marks of his grave on my floor? You're hurting me.
Comme on le voit, l'héroïne entend des voix, ce qui peut être interprété comme un signe avant-coureur de folie, d'autant plus que ces voix prononcent, en tout cas en partie, des phrases qui sont liées à des conversations qu'elle a eues avec d'autres personnages auparavant. Ici, l'ambiguïté quant à l'existence avérée ou non du fantôme, est maintenue grâce à un filmage très particulier qui ne repose pas sur des effets spéciaux clinquants, présents par exemple dans le cinéma d'horreur, mais sur un usage particulier de l'éclairage, du son et des mouvements de caméra, ainsi que de la profondeur de champ, qui est ici très grande, permettant ainsi de créer des effets d'anamorphose qui sont propices à la création d'une atmosphère étrange. Plus rare durant les années d'après-guerre, ou en tout cas confiné plutôt au genre des films d'horreur de série B, les fantômes reviennent hanter les écrans à leur tour dans les années 70-80, à un moment où la société occidentale est en crise et fragilisée notamment par des mouvements politiques et sociaux qui remettent en cause les autorités. Le fantôme, dans ces films, permet notamment de thématiser la difficulté de parents à faire le deuil de leur enfant, comme dans Don't Look Now ou The Changeling. Je passe rapidement, malheureusement, sur cette période par manque de temps, et je passe directement aux 2 décennies suivantes, où parallèlement à la veine horrifique qui est extrêmement riche, se développe une série de comédies romantiques produites par des grandes maisons de production qui utilisent les personnages d'esprits, d'anges et autres créatures de l'au-delà pour traiter à nouveau, comme dans les années 30-40, sur un mode léger, de questions sociales plus aiguës, notamment celles qui touchent à l'égalité entre hommes et femmes au sein du couple ou dans la famille américaine. Dans ces films, les fantômes peinent souvent à être vus et entendus par les vivants, ou alors établissent une mauvaise communication avec ceux-ci, ce qui entraîne malentendus et déconvenus qui sont traités aussi sur un mode comique. C'est le cas en particulier dans les comédies romantiques où des couples sont séparés par la mort, le mari tentant désespérément de rétablir un bon contact avec sa femme. Les problèmes toutefois liés à l'invisibilité et à l'inaudibilité du fantôme peuvent toutefois être résolus grâce à l'intervention d'un médium en mesure de communiquer avec les morts. Le médium permet en effet de contourner l'obstacle posé par l'immatérialité et l'inefficacité du fantôme en devenant une sorte de double instrument de médiation, puisqu'il est à la fois un intermédiaire humain qui transmet un message et établit un lien entre les vivants et les morts, mais il devient aussi, dans cette perspective, une sorte d'outil qui dote le fantôme d'une matérialité, lui donnant une sorte d'efficacité aussi sur le plan matériel. C'est également le cas dans le film espagnol El Orfanato, également présent au FIF, où le médium Spirit Aurora, joué par Géraldine Chaplin, est pourvu d'une réceptivité ultra perfectionnée qui la rend apte à la communication avec les fantômes, attestée d'ailleurs par tout un attirail technologique qui est extrêmement low-tech. Elle est aussi, dans ce film, présentée comme un médium capable d'en savoir plus que la technologie elle-même, qui ne parvient à capter que des bribes de la présence des fantômes, alors que le médium, lui, parvient à en savoir et à communiquer de manière beaucoup plus efficiente avec les fantômes. Dans le cinéma contemporain, et j'arrive aux années 2000, et notamment dans le cinéma dominant, on remarque que le fantôme est omniprésent dans le genre de l'horreur. Les films extra-occidentaux montrant à cet égard peut-être une plus grande variété, comme le prouve le programme du FIF. Dans le film d'horreur, pour rester par exemple sur Crimson Peak de Guillermo del Toro, Le fantôme a essentiellement pour but de faire peur au spectateur, hein, tout en ménageant des effets de suspense et de surprise qui sont favorables à la tension narrative. Voyons un court exemple tiré de ce film.
It would be years before I again heard such a voice, or understood its desperate warning. A warning from out of time, and one that I came to understand only when it was too late.
Alors, le fantôme répond ici au stéréotype du genre de l'horreur, à part peut-être sur un point, le fantôme est noir et non blanc. Durant une nuit d'orage, il apparaît comme une figure fantastique, inhumaine et répulsive, une figure qui défie les lois spatio-temporelles, hein, de notre expérience quotidienne et qui surgit de manière inopinée du hors-champ pour créer des effets de surprise. Et donc, cela répond en fait, hein, vraiment à des conventions de genre qui sont extrêmement ancrées dans l'histoire du cinéma. Mais qu'en est-il des fantômes du FIF? Et j'en viens à ma conclusion. Ceci montre, je pense, une image plus nuancée et plus complexe du fantôme, dont l'apparence n'est pas forcément surnaturelle et qui peut intervenir dans des films qui vont hybrider les genres. Ces films mettent notamment en évidence le caractère extrêmement malléable et polyvalent de la figure du fantôme, qui permet de traiter de questions qui touchent de près chaque culture et chaque individu, à savoir la question fondamentale de la vie après la mort. Il permet également de confronter les spectateurs à des questions délicates, qu'il s'agisse de croyances religieuses ou culturelles, de problèmes sociaux, ethniques, politiques, ou des rapports de force entre dominés et dominants, comme par exemple dans Bombay Bird. Dans Kati Kati, le fantôme blanc peut être vu peut-être comme une métaphore de l'altérité ou de la marginalité. Cette figure, effectivement, peut évoquer la figure de l'albinos, qui en Afrique est souvent considéré comme un fantôme qui vient hanter les vivants, ou alors comme une personne dont les organes ont des pouvoirs magiques. Dans ce sens, le fantôme devient un symbole de groupe marginalisé, voire devient l'image de l'impensé, de l'inconscient, du refoulé, d'un fait donné, si l'on préfère. À travers le fantôme, on peut donc observer des phénomènes d'occultation, de marginalisation, de précarisation dans nos sociétés actuelles. Par ailleurs, le personnage du fantôme permet aussi de problématiser les notions de vision, de perception et de connaissance, comme dans Dearest Sister, où c'est la cécité qui favorise l'émergence des fantômes, faisant ainsi écho à un autre personnage de l'histoire du cinéma, le personnage du médium aveugle dans le film Don't Look Now, qui en fait mobilise, actualise le thème du regard intérieur. Ces films montrent, et notamment Dearest Sister, montrent qu'il faut être doté d'une autre sensibilité perceptive pour voir l'invisible, et donc littéralement être aveugle, hein. Mais il montre aussi une chose extrêmement intéressante qui est assez rare au cinéma, c'est le fait que le monde de l'au-delà n'est pas forcément hostile au monde des humains. Il peut même venir voilà, favoriser leur prospérité ou leur donner des conseils. Au final, on note que les fantômes représentés dans ces films sont la plupart du temps dotés d'une force de subversion, mais aussi d'une force de réflexion révélatrice de problèmes sociaux propres à une culture donnée. Loin d'être un personnage mineur, typique de genre triviaux qui vise à offrir une évasion dans l'imaginaire, comme on l'a souvent pensé d'ailleurs quand on dit qu'on étudie les histoires de fantômes, on a tendance justement à dévaloriser à la fois le fait qu'on les étudie, mais aussi les films eux-mêmes. Ces films qui sont programmés au FIF montrent au contraire que le fantôme peut être aussi une figure politique qui interroge les spectateurs dans leurs convictions et leurs préjugés. Je vous remercie de votre attention.
Merci beaucoup Mireille pour cette introduction qui aurait bien sûr pu être bien plus longue. J'imagine que vous pourriez tenir pendant des heures sur le sujet. Mais ça nous donne déjà une idée plus précise de la place que les fantômes occupent dans le cinéma mondial. Et tout de suite, j'appelle deux de nos invités, Mati Do and Annick Maert, her producer and the director. Please sit. Yeah, sure.
Hello. This is where the good light is. We've got cameras on us after all.
Exactly. You're obviously a director. You know where
like
to place
from
the camera. So some of you may have seen the films already. You may know who our guests are. For the others, so Mati, you are director. You were born in LA, I think, but your parents came from Laos. They flew the country in 1975, right?
Yes, during the Vietnam War.
And you've had several lives in a way. I read that you used to be a makeup artist a long time ago.
Yes,
Is it true or is it a myth?
No, I'm still a makeup artist. I do all the makeup on my own films. The last film we had special effects makeup artists from France, but the normal makeup I was still doing on my film. I take that time to rehearse my actors.
That's singular. And then you go back to Laos in 2010 to start making movies. And your first film, Chantali, so it's your first feature, but it's also the first horror film in Laos, and it's also the first movie made by women. How impossible is that? How come?
It's all coincidence. I mean, Laos is a tiny country. We have 6 million people in the whole country, and it's a very scattered population. So we did not have film after the revolution, after the war, because a lot of culture was eradicated during the regime changeover. And so we didn't have film again until around the 90s. Well, actually, we had one film in 1985, I believe. And it was just, I don't know how you'd say, like a slice of life black and white film, which it's absurd to have a black and white film in the 80s. Like, this is how far behind we were in Laos, you know. And so it's actually not terribly surprising that I'm the only woman who's ever made a film in the country, because we basically started film again in the 90s.
So which means that we know how many films have been done in Laos, like precisely?
I think by now it's 15 probably.
No, I think now we have like 16 films.
16. It was, Dear Sister was the 13th to come out of Laos.
That's amazing. Yeah. So in 2014, you go to the Fabrique de Cinéma du Monde, that we could translate by the factory of world cinema.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was in Cannes, and Institut Français actually organized it, and they asked me to submit, and I had no idea like what I was going for. Actually, I had no clue. I submitted, and it was a very difficult process. And when I was accepted, I had to read it 3 times to understand that I was accepted, because I couldn't believe it. You know, I was like, "Is this for real? So I'm going to Cannes? That's like unreal." I went.
You did. And then 2016, Dearest Sister, so your second feature, right, produced by Annick. How did the two of you meet?
So, Gently, I mean, we have a common friend, a friend called Todd Brown. He's a Canadian, and he created a website at the time. It was called Twitch Film, and he's like a film buff, and he heard about Gently because of the Luang Prabang Film Festival. And I read an article about the film on his website. And at the time, I'm still working with a sales agent doing acquisitions. So I was very curious about the film. And I wrote to Maddie and asked her if I could, get a link to watch the film. And she very kindly sent it to me. I watched it and really liked it, but I knew that for the Western audiences, it was not strong enough in terms of scares.
I actually thought you hated it. Your
No.
email back was like, yeah, I can't sell this. Thanks for letting me see it.
Well, I'm always trying to be very diplomatic, you know me. So, and then, but I said, keep me posted about any other projects, and you know how it goes. Like you kind of stay in touch, but you don't. But then we met again at the Fantastic Fest in Austin, where Gently was playing. It was in September 2013. And she heard my name, called out, and she came to me and said, "You're Annick Mannert, right?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "You remember, you saw my film." And I did remember after a while.
No, actually, you didn't. Let me put this into context, people. I was so naive. I had no idea what a sales agent does, okay? I had no idea that she watches like 200 films a month. So I'm just like approaching this woman like, "You remember me? You watched my film." I'm like, one film out of 1,000. And she's like, "Who are you?" But this name, Annick, it's not common in Laos or in America, and so it really rung out. And she was at the director of Fantastic Fest, his home, and we were all being hosted there as industry people for a dinner. And they said, to open the festival, we'd like Annick Mannert to come up and basically start the festivity. And they brought out a bottle of champagne and a samurai sword, and she cut open this damn bottle of champagne with a samurai sword. I was like, "Oh, she's a badass. Oh my God." And I was like, I have to know if that's her. And it was, after I jogged her memory, I said, "That film from Lao." And she's like, "Lao." And I was like, "That stars the dog, the white lévrier." And she's like, "Oh, yeah. Because I think that year it was the only film with the white lévrier in it.
It's probably the only film I've seen with a light white livery.
Anyway.
But I mean, so we met there, and then we met again in Cannes. We kept in touch, and then she went to Toronto. She was invited to the Toronto Film Lab as well the same year after Cannes.
You just kept seeing me all over the
Yeah,
place.
I kept seeing you all over. And then she was coming to Amiens because she was pitching the project at the festival, which was about an hour away from Paris. And I said, "Oh, this is great. I'll be in Paris at the time. I'll come to see you. Why don't you just tell the festival that your French producer's coming, so I can get a free hotel room?" And because it was just, I didn't want to pay for a hotel room, just
We
too
were
cheap
like,
for
"Oh, we're
that.
gonna have like the Van show. It's gonna be awesome. We're gonna hang out."
But the next day, I got this email from the festival, very official, saying they were really looking forward to meet the French producer of Matido, and we were stuck. I was like, "What do we do?" And then we discussed it, and was like, I would produce your film if you'd want me to. And then she said, "Okay." And then so overnight we practiced as the pitches, and the next day we were pitching the film, and I became her producer overnight.
You didn't offer to be my producer until after we finished the pitches.
Really?
They were like, "Here's your official schedule." She's like, "Ah, crap." And then she was like, "I gotta learn your project, and I gotta learn the budget." And then we rehearsed it. She's like, "It's okay, we'll do this." And we actually got very close to winning one of the prizes. We tied for the final prize, but at the end they chose the other film, which was a lot less genre-oriented. And I remember we went and got drunk afterwards, and she was saying, "I should just be your producer now. I know your film so well." And I was like, "Yeah, you can totally be my producer." And that's what happened.
And by the way, I want to say this is actually coming full circle. We talked about this when we pitched in Amiens. There was this person, a Swiss guy, that had a box of chocolates, Villars chocolates, and we fed on those Villard chocolates. And then when you got here, you had
Yeah.
a box of Villard chocolates.
There was a
So
box of Villard
it was
chocolate.
meant to be.
It is meant to be.
Everything
Yeah.
makes sense.
I mean, Fief is awesome. I opened that Fief bag and it was like Villard chocolate, and I went, I'm a real filmmaker now.
So that's how it's working. When you want to be produced by a producer, you just keep popping up everywhere she is, and that's an amazing story.
I guess it's also because we're having so much fun together, and I mean we don't see filmmaking as being like this difficult task of. I mean we've had our share of trouble on the film, on the production, but we always sit down and we talk about it and we kind of have fun, and I think that's why it works.
I mean, filmmaking should be fun, right? It's at the end of the day, it's entertainment for the audiences, and why would I put so much hard work into something that I just hated? You know?
So you also had several work life, Annick. You were born in Switzerland. You started working with big studios like Warner Bros., 20th Century Fox. Then you moved to France, to Paris, and you were at that time working as a sales agent, doing international sales. Could you also maybe explain what you were doing? Because
Well,
I don't know if everybody knows
Yeah,
what job
so
it is.
I'm from Geneva, and I started working for 20th Century Fox in Geneva in 2001. And then 3 weeks after I actually started there, they told me, we're moving to Zurich. And I was like, I just, bought a car, got an apartment. But it told me, like, if you want to come, you can come. So I moved to Zurich, and then there was this merge going with Warner Brothers. So it was called Fox Warner, and it still is. And then, so I worked there for 4 years, did a quick stop at Warner Home Entertainment, became a marketing manager for Pathé, the Cineplex in Dietlikon, worked 2 years as a production assistant for Maximage in Zurich, and then was chief of distribution for Frenetic Films in Zurich for 5 years. And then, for some reason, maybe just I felt like I've done all the jobs that you could do in Switzerland, and my ambition was just bigger than Switzerland. and
look at us now in Switzerland.
So I moved to Paris. I started working for a company called Celluloid Dreams, that is a pretty well-known sales agent. And for, unfortunately, only 9 months, I was doing sales and acquisitions, and I was laid off. And then I thought, okay, I cannot go back to Switzerland because, I mean, there's nothing waiting for me there. And so what do? I knew I had about 9 months of unemployment money I could use, and I decided to just go solo. I created my own company, and what I did is I used the model that it was unknown in Europe really before. I became an acquisition consultant that works in the US, but no one really did it in Europe before. So I was offering my services as a film scout to distributors and sales agents. You put up a fee, you see this is the fee you pay for the whole year, you put a year fee, and then you just go out to festivals and you work for these people and you just like basically watch films. So basically you're being paid to watch films, which is a great job.
So does it mean because you had this experience with sales that you know how maybe a bit better how to work with festivals or with distribution companies, and what sells better than the other?
I think that it's really the accumulation of all the jobs I did that is really to my advantage, because I understand the whole chain of filmmaking, of the process, from basically the inception to basically releasing a film. And I mean, I do have my own taste of film watching. There's films that I love, there's films I hate. But it certainly helped. I mean, doing sales and doing acquisitions for like a renowned sales agent sharpens like how can I put this? Like, it does tell you which films you should go and look at. And I guess that I have my taste. But I mean, I told a couple of days ago, like, I love horror films. Like, I grew up with horror films. My first contact with filmmaking and film in general was 8 years old, watching horror films, going out to video clubs, renting VHS, and just that's my contact with film and then 15 you discover Orson Welles, and suddenly you discover a whole new world outside of just horror. But somehow I just kept horror in my heart as being this kind of genre that I love, and I developed, I guess, different sensibility to genre film. I lost my thought. I don't know what your question was, but
how does all that crap you did before help you now?
But now, yeah. Well, I guess, as I said, like, it's this accumulation of different jobs and knowledge that I have that brought me to production. And then, I mean, I did produce a short film a few years back, which is called Dead Bones, which was a cannibal western from a guy from Neuchâtel, actually. And we had like 70 festival. It was a good tour. We won several awards. But more than that, it was just like, I guess it's just project management. And if you're thorough like I am, because maybe I'm Swiss and I'm very square in how I
it's a cultural trait, huh?
It is. I just said, let's just produce this and just, learning by doing. Yeah.
I mean, it's super important. A lot of people, especially film school people, they know how to make a film. Of course, they have the artistic value. They understand how to work in production on set. But what happens afterwards, I feel many people who make films don't know or don't understand. And you really brought this edge to us where it's like, okay, now a lot of people are like, okay, I made the film, now what? And she understands not just festival premieres, but also sales and distribution and etc. And that's super helpful, especially when you're, maybe if you're creative, you're not aware of what happens to films after you finish them,
So both of you have this specific connection to genre film because your first feature was also a horror movie. So what was the cinema you grew up with? Did you have a connection with the few film from Laos, or at least from the region?
No, not at all. When I was little, there were no films from Laos at all, except for that one 1985 black and white film that it's difficult to watch a film like that. It's one of those just like, black and white. I don't even think it's 35 millimeter. I think it's like 16 millimeter or something. And it's just village life. Very difficult for a young child to watch something like that. I watched a lot of crappy films, like really shit films. I grew up on like RoboCop and Terminator, and
they're not shit films.
I know they're masterpieces to us. I don't know what
Come on.
I mean, I don't think RoboCop played at Fribourg International.
You never know.
Might
happen.
Actually, the director,
Jerry,
the director of RoboCop is considered like one of the great auteurs now, right? I actually really am not into this guy at all. He made a new masterpiece that everybody just loved, and I'm just like, what? Anyway, just don't put that on TV, people. I also grew up with this video store background. In the old days, like in the 80s, you would go to the video store, and they have the shelves with these covers and that smell. Do you guys remember the smell of the video store? Like the old carpet and kind of like damp, musty smell. It had a smell.
I do. Yeah, we had it.
I love this. And my father would rent a movie, and he would let us pick one. And usually, as a kid, I didn't know about ratings or anything. I would just walk by and look at all the cool pictures. And of course, what films had the best photos on the cover? Genre films. I tell people all the time, I still remember this cover of this party. They're all at a dinner table, and they all have champagne and food. And this girl in a beautiful gown, she's raising her glass of champagne, but behind her back, she's got a knife, and her long hair is braided into a noose.
Was it April Fool's Day?
It is. And I wanted that film all the time. And it was one of the films that my dad always said, no, this is not for you. But he rented me a lot of bad films because he's an immigrant. His English was not great back then. And sometimes he's like, okay, this is a film my daughter wants to watch. And he didn't know the rating system, and he just rented it for us. And it affected my life in many ways. And now we're making genre films.
And Dearest Sister is not a horror film, but it's definitely a ghost film, even if it's not only a ghost film. There are ghosts in it. And so a young woman, so it's taking place in Laos, and a young woman who is a villager comes to the main city, to the capital, to work for her cousin who is richer and who is turning blind. And while losing her sight, the rich cousin starts to have this connection with dead people, right? So first thing first, what is your personal connection with ghost?
I'm one of these people who I don't feel spiritual. I'm not an esoteric kind of spiritual person. I have had incidences that felt like hauntings, but because I'm not a very spiritual person, I don't know what to think about them. I mean, there have been some weird instances in my life where I'm just like, oh man, that was a haunting, but really? I don't know if I believe or not. But I'm not in denial that there could be something we don't understand out there, whether it can be explained scientifically or not. But being Asian, being Lao and Vietnamese specifically, we are very tied to the supernatural world, extremely. One of the things in our film that Western audiences notice is how unremarkable a haunting can be in Lao, and how everybody just accepts that they're ghosts, and that they're in our lives, and that maybe you had a spiritual encounter, maybe it was a ghost. Because in the West, it'd be like, no, it's not ghosts. It's not. But in Lao, it would be 90% of the population, if you said, I encountered a ghost, they'd be like, yeah, really? What happened? They would believe you right away. No one would doubt you. And that was difficult for the Occidental audience to accept, because they're like, how is no one doubting the experience, And because authentically in Lao, no one would. I could leave this room right now and say, I got haunted by the cinema ghost, and every Lao person would be like, oh, I've had an experience like that before, and it's kind of crazy in how much a part of our lives ghosts are. Every home has a shrine that we make offerings to. Anik was there when I moved house, and we made an offering to the spirits of the house, because whenever you come to a new location, you weren't there. Before we open a film, we have to make offerings to the spirits to make sure that nothing goes wrong on the film set, and that the ghosts do not disturb the film set. And we have photos from that where we made the Estonian crew participate, and they take it very seriously.
So I guess that's what the owner of the Arena Cinema forgot to do, the offering.
We needed to bring the incense to Arena.
Well, it was called Cap Cine at the time, and it was like a Belgium company, so they just had no clue.
I could have brought the incense and candles.
And what about you, Anik? Being Swiss, what is your relationship to ghost?
I think it's a little bit the same. I don't necessarily completely believe in it, but I respect it. And to be very honest, I think it was last year, I was in Kalovivari. There's a great festival there. I don't know if you guys know how Kalovivari looks like, but it's basically this Disneyland of Czech Republic, where all these Russian tsars went, for the baths, like the hot mud and all that. And I was staying at this very, very old hotel. I had gotten like this last minute deal for like really super cheap. And then one morning, for some reason, my alarm clock didn't go off. And I woke up and I felt something in the back of my head, just like patting me very nicely and sweetly. Like, I was like, I woke up, I was like, what time is it? Like, oh, okay. And I was like, that was weird. And then I got home at night and the window was open. And then I was sitting, and the way the room was made was like in the entrance there was this light switch, like when you would pass it, the light would go off. And I was not in any ways like close to that switch, so I couldn't like have triggered it. And I was just reading a script, and then suddenly this light would go on, and off and on. I was like, okay, this is really weird. So, but I felt like this is a good spirit, whoever that was, for waking me up in the morning and telling me you're late for your meetings.
It was a Swiss ghost.
Probably. Well, probably. But I I don't know if I believe in it, but I respect it. I respect the fact that maybe we don't know enough about it, and but I certainly love watching films about ghosts.
My mother had a super interesting relationship with that kind of crap. Like, growing up, lots of weird things happened around my mother. I've seen an apparition around her, and it just seemed to attract itself. But like I said, I don't know what to believe. Like, I don't know how I feel. There was one time where my mother said, "I feel a presence here in the garage area of our home." And I was just like, that's so strange. And she described him as a white man with curly hair and with really pearly white teeth. And we didn't think anything about it. And then one day, one of our friends was in that garage, and she screamed and ran out. And I ran down to see what happened. I saw a light fading from the garage. And by the time I went inside, it was dark. And then this woman described the same man. And much later, we found out that this man was a neighbor who had lived next door to our home and had committed suicide on our property after his wife had died. And there's a lot of weird things like this that my mother had. Some of the hauntings in Dear Sister are based on experiences that my mother has had. But of course, they didn't happen to me. But being a child and listening to this, and my mother was a very logical woman. She was not one of these, like, plays with Ouija boards and wears hippie clothes kind of women. She's actually a very shrewd entrepreneur. And I put a lot of the incidences that we experienced through her in Dear Sister. And this is very personal. I've never told anyone this. She predicted her own death. She told us when she was going to die to the day, because she was very ill, and she started to see things, and she said, they're waiting for me on the other side. And my mother never talks like that. Like I said, she's a very shrewd businesswoman. And then one day we were, helping her. She became very incapacitated and couldn't walk, and we were trying to groom her, and she said, don't worry about it. I'm not going to make it past tomorrow. And she passed away. It was insane, actually, but all my life, she was like that. I mean, I don't have any special connection like her, but it's odd.
I don't know about you, but I'm starting to have goosebumps a bit. And now that you're talking about it...
Bring the Exorcist.
Absolutely. Now that you're talking about it, I remember that I was at the Karlovy Film Festival last summer too, and some weird things happened in my hotel room. Very small things started to disappear.
Serious?
I promise. Like first a pen, then a mug, a lighter, very small things. So maybe, I mean, not the Swiss ghost.
Maybe we were in the same room.
We didn't even notice.
But I mean, if I may, you mentioned the Ouija board, and I was talking about respect. It's like, I don't know about you, but I mean, for example, I would never. This is something. I have far too much respect to just sit down and just play with a Ouija board, because I respect that there's things that we don't know. And I wouldn't want to piss off, basically, because of course, at some point you're young and you want to inquire a little bit about the spirit world. And so a friend of mine who is deceased now, passed away, told me that there's layers in the spirit world, and that usually the first layer that you contact with a Ouija board is usually the bad seed. And those are the spirits that are the ones that contact you, are the bad ones.
Well, because
it takes much
right?
more energy to actually go through the layers. And so that stuck with me, and I'm like, no, I'm not even trying that. Not necessarily because I'm afraid, because I have far too much respect for all these things that we do, for the unknown, basically.
You have respect. I'm just freaking scared. I'm like fucking terrified. Jeez. We are children of the 80s, We saw those movies. Those movies where the Ouija board opens some like portal to the unknown. And I had cousins that played with the Ouija board once, and they claimed that some terrible things happened, and it was terrifying. And their parents had to bring monks to do like an exorcism too. So I don't know. Like, I don't know if they were just panicking and paranoid, but like, that's scary, I don't know.
I think it's going to be time for us to watch next episode of Dearest Sister. Est-ce qu'on pourrait lancer le premier extrait donc du film Dearest Sister, s'il vous plaît. Merci.
เจ้าอยากบอกอย่างเจ้าว่ามาโลดค่อยบุยานเจ้าดอกค่อยสิฟังค่อยสิฟังแม่ หลับตาอยู่นี่ละอยู่ซะเบิ่งมันจบละ
This is not really helping with the goosebumps, right? Could you say a few words about what we've just seen and maybe introduce the characters we see on screen?
That was a Lao ghost, I would say, but I'm in a very fortunate position, being the only genre filmmaker in the country, to create my own ghosts. One of the problems that I have with a lot of Lao filmmaking is that a lot of it is imitation. Lao filmmakers have watched Thai films or Chinese and Korean films, and they want to make Thai films. They want to make Japanese films. So they imitate these ghosts that are like white and long black hair and see-through or something. And actually, in that credit, Asians don't usually have the see-through ghosts so much because we believe the ghosts are very tangible. But I was like, this is not Lao. Lao does not look like that. It does not feel like that. Why do we have to make films that imitate Thailand and Japan and Korea? We don't. I can put Lao on screen in the way that Lao is authentically truthful, you know? And so I put a very physical ghost in there, and I got to work with special effects for this film in France with Seth Ickerman. And we made this smoky effect with this ash because we cremate. We don't bury our bodies in Lao, we cremate. And I thought that this was a very interesting signifier of ghosts coming because they are cremated and they exist in ash, which is something that I came up with on my own, the ash and smoke concept. And we'd seen Guillermo del Toro's ghost from The Devil's Backbone with the water artifacts. And I was like, this seems more true to what we would believe than the Japanese ring ghost, you know, or the Western see-through ghost. And another thing is like the blind girl seeing images in the corner of her vision. This is something extremely Lao that we believe that when you lose one sense, you can gain another. Like maybe you go deaf, but your vision, you start to see things, etc. And that's a very Lao belief. I remember I had a critic who watched the film, and I don't believe he finished watching the film, say, oh, it's just another eye. She's just imitating this film called The Eye, and we've seen it before, and Asian films always do this. A blind girl sees ghosts. And I was like, you didn't finish watching the film because these aren't actually ghosts. They're premonitions, one. And two, I've never fucking seen The Eye, so how would I even know that? You know? And the lottery numbers is extremely loud. When people die, we believe they come to you in a vision or in a dream or a spiritual visitation, and they bring you numbers to play in the lottery to take care of yourself after someone has passed, or they show you something symbolic. For instance, if you dream of a dog, you would buy the numbers of the dog. Or if you see a turtle passing by, you would believe that the spirit of your mother came to you in the form of a turtle. And you'd buy the numbers of a turtle. And it's natural, completely 100% natural in our country.
And the rich cousin, the one who has those visions, her husband is from Estonia. Was the point to embody this different of approach to also to ghosts, to have this character coming from the Western world compared to the way Eastern world understands ghost?
I thought that was super important to show the culture clash between West and East, actually, because in the film he's like, you're crazy, you're hurting yourself. She's being hurt because of her encounters with the ghost, but he blames her. And it's very often in these relationships where men come and find what they consider subservient women or submissive women to blame the woman, obviously. And he takes her to the doctor, and he's very oppressive, like, can we just put her on some Zoloft or Prozac or something? And, immediately the blame is put on her. And she doesn't fight back very much because the expectation is that she has to be quiet because he's a provider. He's the one who's providing. And this is something I really wanted to put on screen because there's so many stereotypes both in the East and the West about these relationships. Our own women in Asia in Lao believe that they can elevate their status by finding a European or Western man and getting a better passport and leaving. And sometimes, I hate to say it, it's still very common for them to do unsavory things and take desperate measures just to get a man who might be an awful, horrible man just because they think that their lives will be improved if they can go to Switzerland or France or something. And by the same token, some of these men who are rejects of their own society come to Laos and Thailand, and they'll hook up with not so savory women, just trying to get some woman to pay attention to them because maybe in their own country they could not get someone. And it's a very vicious cycle. And so I do portray this in a very ugly fashion on screen because I felt that it was important for people to see that. Because Laos is not just this exotic, mystic land of Orientals and brown smiles, and that's why I wanted to put it up on screen.
So your film is obviously not only a genre film, but because there is a ghost, okay, it has this connection. Are genre films more maybe difficult or expensive to produce? And also, is it harder to find space in festivals? Because I sometimes have the feeling that when it's connected to a genre, even if it's more than that, the films sometimes have difficulties to find the same place that more classical films, let's say, would have.
Yeah, definitely. We had some trouble with Dear Sister, to be very honest, because I don't necessarily label it as a genre film. I like to label it as more, not label it, but for me it's a social drama with fantastic elements. And so with a pure genre film, you would go the traditional route of going to all these genre festivals around the world that are very specialized. With Dear Sister, we've tried Berlin, we've tried Venice. We were on the short list for Critics Week in Venice. We've tried Cannes and all the bigger ones, and I think we were just not. I mean, in French we say on a le cul en deux chaises, the ass between two chairs. Where for traditional festivals we were too genre, and then for some genre festivals we were too auteur. So it took us a while to actually get the right festival start. Fortunately, we had the Fantastic Fest where Chantilly played for the first time. They immediately wanted it because they knew this is also like the second film coming out of Laos, from Maddie, and they're a very curious festival. It's actually growing. It's becoming one of the major festivals to go to in the US. And then we had the surprise of when I met this woman in Cannes that I didn't know. She made some comments about, like, she complimented me on my T-shirt, which was this, but in white, a striped sailor T-shirt. For some reason, she said, "I love your T-shirt." And just we started joking and speaking, and I was like, "Well, this is what I do." And she said, "Well, I'm a BFI film programmer for the festival." I was like, "Really?" It's like, "I have a film for you," joking about it and say, "You should look at it. I registered last week." And she said, "What is it about?" And I pitched it to her, and she was like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting." And then 2 weeks later, we got the invitation that BFI London wanted our film. And I think that this selection triggered a lot of other selections. We went to Singapore, Hawaii. We had festivals that were not necessarily genre. And then, honestly, like, I think it's the same for every filmmaker. You need that one festival that basically puts you on the map, and from there on, then you can count your selections. But it's
the reviews
really
were
hard.
great. The reviews out of London were really amazing because people didn't know what to expect. They didn't know if it was a genre film or a drama, and oh, wow, we had very positive reviews, and that helped a lot. But you talk about these festivals and where's our place in these festivals for genre films, and it is hard. It's very difficult. I have no film background. I never went to school for film. I'm not a cinephile, right? I nearly said it again, cinephiliac. I'm not a cinephile. I don't know classic films. I don't know anything about films, actually. So when I make a film, they feel very different. They don't follow anything that is pre-existing. In fact, they probably more follow ballet because I was a ballet dancer. So I go in a very auteur way. But at the same time, it's hard for some of these big festivals to take me seriously because I have these genre fantastic elements. I've been approached by many people saying, "You come from Laos. Why don't you make a more authentic, like Southeast Asian film?" And when they say that, they mean like these ugly films where everybody sits around saying nothing, doing nothing. These ugly wide shots of people eating and talking about their very authentic rice and shit. And I'm just like, that is not Southeast Asia. This is the Occidental vision of Southeast Asia, of us mystic Orientals sitting around being holy and esoteric. No, we're not like that. We have tuk-tuks and loud motorcycles, and we have girls in the bar trying to pick up nasty Australians, It's like, this is Southeast Asia. And when I make a film like this, it's almost like they're offended that I would break the Oriental mold that they expect. And I'll continue to. My next film is a science fiction film in the village side, because everyone said, "Why don't you be more authentic and make a film in the countryside, in the villages?" And I said, "I'll make you a damn film in the countryside. It's gonna be a science fiction film." Lao 2065, people.
Where nothing has changed.
Still dirt roads. I live on a dirt road.
And I have a last question before turning to the audience. I would just like to know, the two of you being women in a world that is mostly male. I mean, I'm talking especially about films with genre elements or genre films, and usually we imagine men, or men think that they are the only one to be able to do some horror films. I mean, you have exceptions like Karen Kusama, for instance, but do you feel that sometimes people are surprised to see you, or is it something that is helping in a way because you are not so many?
Well, I'm fortunate enough to be this generation of festival directors, festival programmers, directors, actors that are in the same age as I am. And we all met at the same time at some point at a festival. We all grew up together. We're growing old together. And they all respect the fact, they respect my knowledge and they respect my person. The same way I do respect them. And so because they've known me for so long, there's never been a single question about my legitimacy, or is that what you say? Legitimacy, sorry. And the fact that I might not know enough. I mean, I've really established myself as a specialist in Europe for genre film. I collaborate with Frontier, which is a major market now for genre films. And me personally, I had never, ever had trouble even discussing with male directors or male producers. So I can really say I'm really fortunate there. But I know that you're in a totally different position.
I think they're scared of you. They've seen you boxing in a ring before. In Fantastic Fest history, she's still the only woman who's ever been in a boxing ring against a man, and you beat the crap out of him, didn't you? Yeah, I think they're scared of you. My experience is a lot different. I get treated really poorly, actually. But luckily, I do have one of these, my personality is kind of like, well, screw it. Like, I made a film, and I had no one to help me, so, like, I'm going to do it again. Like, what? Are you going to stop me from making a film? I dare you. So this is my personality, but it's hard. I have a lot of people who are like, I don't deserve to make a film. I get this from the art world, actually, or the NGO world, the people who like to give money to development, or because they want to choose their sad person and pull them from the mud and say, I made her. I chose her,
I chose her. I chose her.
I chose you. You had the samurai sword and the bottle of champagne. Why wouldn't I choose you? No, but this is the problem. I came out of nowhere. I just made a film. Nobody knew I was going to make a film. My husband and my friends and I, with Lau Art Media, just seriously appeared out of nowhere with a feature film, and people were bitter. They were just like, who the hell does she think she is to just like make a film? She didn't go to school, she didn't study, she knows no one. And people got angry. I don't know, maybe they would be if I was a man too, I don't know.
You're still boycotted by one of the journalists in Laos, right?
Yeah, one of the journalists in Laos still really hate me because I'm not one of the special NGO projects. I had some people even talk about my ethnicity because I'm half Vietnamese, and they said to me, "You're not even a real Lao," which I was like, "Oh, I dare you to say that to my father and see how he reacts." Like, I dare you. And who are these people who are not? They're foreigners. They're totally Occidental foreigners to come to me and say, "You're not a real Lao." These guardians of Asian culture who can decide what is truly Asian and what is not. I'm like, go fuck yourself. And then we have my colleagues who are all around my age and who have like multiple degrees from foreign film schools, who are polite because, we're colleagues, but treat me in this way. Like, in the beginning, they're like, oh, that's cute. Do you think you're making a film? That's really cute, honey. And then I made a film, and then I made another film, and then I produced 2 more, one of which won a Canadian Oscar, and one of which won a jury award in Locarno. And now they're just like, she's connected somehow. She's connected. She's playing connections. And it's like, this is the kind of crap I have to face. But I don't know. I made a film for nothing in the beginning. I'll continue to make films. People can either come along for the ride and have fun with us, or they can stand in the way, and I'll just go around them because they weren't there when I made my first film, so why do I care?
Thank you. Est-ce que vous avez des questions dans le public? Ah, déjà une devant, 3e rang.
Yeah! You can't be Swiss.
I know, that was so quick. Are there questions?
This is like, she's not Swiss. Because usually Swiss are like waiting an hour to raise their hands.
I'm from Ticino, actually.
There you go.
Hi, Annick.
Hey!
Hi.
Didn't recognize you.
Yeah.
Glad you could make it.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me. Thank you, Mari. You're so inspiring. Listening to you really gives a lot of strength and all of that. I wanted to ask you, you mentioned you trained in ballet and you used to be a ballet dancer. How do you use this art in your filmmaking? Meaning, do you find yourself choreographing sequences, and how does that? Okay, yeah, that's
very much so. All my films are based off of ballet. Actually, she's seen when I block scenes. Sometimes I enter the set with my music first in my headphones, and I will block my scenes and I count them, and then I get my actors to follow this rhythm. But because of this, It's really funny. We're slow in Lao to make a film because we have only 10 people on the crew. So setting up and taking down and moving locations is extremely slow. But as a director, I am not a slow director. My husband and Annick joke that I'm a 3-take girl. Take 1, okay. Take 2, that's nice. For the actor, take 2, what the actor wants to do. Take 3, I got it. And then everybody on set is like, we should do one for safety. We should do one for safety. And it's like, yeah, okay, I guess. I'm not going to use it, but all right. But it's because of this choreography from ballet. I love filmmaking. Filmmaking to me is in some ways easier because if we fuck up, we can do it again. Take 2, people. It's all right. We can stop the camera and do it again. In ballet, if you fall on your face on stage, you just made an ass of yourself. And then you get your pay cut from your artistic director, and then you don't get the next principal role, sadly. I was really a sucky ballet dancer, actually. But I have long, how would you say this? Long scenes. We do a lot of long choreographed scenes where we move from multiple locations. We follow the actor. We change focus to other actors and come back. We cut into some of these scenes for the film, but almost all of the scenes in the film that are long takes exist wholly. You can use them uncut. And Todd Brown actually was shocked when he first saw that because he was looking at the dailies that we would turn in, and he was like, I cannot believe that you're doing these long takes. Like, people have like teams of 50, a crew of 50 with a steady cam and a focus puller and all these just to be able to pull off what you're pulling off. And I'm like, it's just choreography. It's just ballet, you know? And to me, it's not difficult. And he even said to Anik and Chris, he's like, don't let her think it's difficult, because the day she thinks it's difficult is the day that she'll start to fall back, you know? Because I don't know that that's difficult, because it's natural from being a dancer to do it. And my shots are determined from ballet. Like, you'll see there's a lot of closes in the film. I like to focus on the hands and the feet, and every gesture has an impetus, you know? When you reach for something, like even the way the finger trembles in the movie, it's discussed with the actors. I place it in there because as a dancer, when you as an audience watch a ballet, you're watching this wide shot. But me as a dancer on stage, I see my partner, and when he gives me his hand, all I see is his hand really close. And when he makes this big gesture to the audience, I have this intimacy where he's going to hold me, and all I see are his eyes, and I can feel his breath on my skin before I'm lifted. And I put this in the movie from my view on stage, not from the audience's view in a wide shot. And this is something that was very important to me in film, so that I can take the audience gaze into my feeling on stage.
Thank you.
That's complicated, sorry.
No, it's very clear.
The director of photography remembers the long shots. He had like 3 months of physiotherapy afterwards.
Yeah, the poor guy. And he had no focus puller. Our film had only one person on the camera crew, and that was a DOP. That's it. He had to pull his own focus.
He did everything himself.
Yeah, there's no AC, nothing. And I didn't know that wasn't normal. In fact, sometimes he would complain. He said, you want to do these long takes, and it's so hard. And, you know, like the Estonian producer's like, oh my God, what can we do to help you? And I just sat there and I said, can you do it? Like, can you or can't you? Or do I have to find a way to get it done? He's like, no, I can do it. It's like, well, then let's do it. Because I just didn't understand the difficulty.
Sometimes that's the key. Je crois qu'on a deux questions au fond. J'ai vu des bras se lever, non? Oui.
So yes, there's a simple question for you. So just basically, what elicited your interest in ghosts and apparitions, such as in Dearest Sister? The reason why I'm asking this question is because something that's quite telling about ghosts is that very often they appear for a certain set of reasons, for specific circumstances. And very often, in many cultures, so I don't know specifically about yours, but in many cultures, it's when like the order of nature has been broken. Like there is an ethical issue. For instance, someone is assassinated. Parents cannot overcome the grief of a lost children. So there's injustice somewhere. So I wanted to ask you basically if your interest for ghosts was related to these sets of issues.
That's very important, actually, because he's right. You always hear about the ghost because it has unfinished business, right? Unfinished business, or it's dissatisfied somehow. which we believe too in Lao. We also have this kind of ghost, but it's so common. Like, this is the European belief, and if I did that, even though we do believe this, it just wouldn't make my film very unique. But what does make my film very unique is the Lao belief that ghosts are just an everyday part of our lives, that they're always there, that they're with you. They're with us now in this room. The arena ghost is still here. We don't believe in exorcism as in purging the ghost. We just believe that the ghost is happy that you guys did some exorcism and offered him something. So now he can live with you guys in peace here. But he's here, or she. And I wanted people to experience the Lao ghost, physical, tangible, present, day or night. Someone had mentioned that before. They said, oh my God, day hauntings, because the Western ghost comes at night. And I wanted people to see this, that they're ever-present, omnipresent. But also, the most important part of Dear Sister and presenting the ghost in such a fashion was actually the opposite of what you were talking about. It's that I wanted the audience to understand that people are much more terrifying than ghosts and apparitions. The ghosts in our film do serve a purpose. They bring the lottery numbers. They fuel the greed in Nok. They're the premonitions that Anna cannot understand, are premonitions. But in the end of the day, the way these characters treat each other and the way the Lao people are starting to treat each other now in real society is much more terrifying and sinister than any spirit or apparition could inflict on a human being. And that's something that I really wanted people to understand, that what can a spirit do to you, but what can you do to me? You know, what you can do to me is much more horrifying than what a ghost can do.
Thank you. Je vous propose, après cette discussion très intense, que nous fassions une petite pause, un petit quart d'heure, disons, et puis on se retrouve avec MBT et Kamal pour poursuivre cette conversation avec d'autres types de fantômes et peut-être des esprits également. Voilà, à tout de suite, merci.
Merci.
Thank you guys. Khop jai.